Hello and welcome back to Time Wizard Throwbacks, the show where I showcase the legacy format each episode to give you a look into how it operates and what the metagame looks like. Let me be real with you all. When it comes to legacy formats, most likely there is one that every one of you has experienced at least a little bit. The grandfather of all legacy formats. So let's rip the band-aid off now. We're looking at GOAT format today.
Those are some annoying scapegoats.
For those of you who are not aware, GOAT format took place in mid-2005 following the release of The Lost Millennium. This is the last set that we would receive before the game would change massively with the release of Cybernetic Revolution, Cyber Dragon, Cyber Twin, Cyber End, and all the Cyberstein cheese decks that come with that. It's referred to as GOAT format for mainly the popularity of Scapegoat, one of the most important control cards from this format. At the time, Scapegoat was extremely impactful as you flip it to get 4 tokens on your field, which eats 4 different attacks. Today, we're going to really showcase what this format was all about by showcasing the deck GOAT Control. Generally, when you think of GOAT format, this is going to be the deck that immediately comes to mind, as it is the format's namesake. The idea of it is you have a lot of different very powerful one-ofs in this deck that are going to be extremely impactful in different ways. Things like Delinquent Duo to rip your opponent's hand apart. Things like Heavy Storm to completely blow out back row. Mirror Force to wipe opponent's board. Torrential Tribute to wipe an opponent's board. Ring of Destruction, spot removal. Snatch Steal, really powerful monster take. Pot of Greed and Graceful Charity. If you wanted to play no summon mechanics Yu-Gi-Oh!, this is generally where you're looking at. We're going to go through a quick card-by-card breakdown of this deck. Note real quick, you will see an extra deck at the bottom. That extra deck is actually not going to be too impactful to this deck building, as in this format, the fusion deck had no size limit, meaning you could play 3 of literally every fusion in the game, so long as you had a copy of it. In an online simulator, you can basically search whatever monster you're wanting to use with Metamorphosis in this regard. So going through the card-by-card breakdown, Air Knight Parshath is a particularly useful body. He is a level 5, which means we have to tribute summon it, but he is a 1900 with piercing, meaning anyone who's summoning scapegoats in this format is going to be sorely disappointed. And anytime he deals battle damage, we draw a card, which nets us just great advantage overall. We're on 3 Azura Priest. So Azura Priest is an extremely important piece in this format because of its ability to attack everything once. If your opponent flips a scapegoat, you can deal with all of them. Your opponent has a recruiter, you deal with everything that recruiter summons. It's just all around an amazing card. I think the only recruiter that it does not beat intrinsically is Pyramid Turtle, and that's just because Pyramid Turtle can summon bigger bodies. We have 1 Blackluster Soldier and subsequently 1 Chaos Sorcerer. Chaos is still the name of the game here. We have a lot of lights and darks in this deck that are really useful for generating our Chaos game plan. Generally though, these are not the backbone of our deck, more so they're finishers. 1 Breaker the Magical Warrior. This is one of the best cards for removing specific back row as MST is limited. 1 DD Warrior Lady. Sometimes you just need to get rid of a card that is causing you issues. DD Warrior Lady is extremely useful for that. 1 Dark Mimic level 1. So this is actually a very interesting card here. We are also playing 2 Dekoichi, which do the exact same thing, but the reason we do Dark Mimic level 1 instead of a 3rd Dekoichi is because of Thousand Eyes Restrict. We'll get into that once we get to Metamorphosis. 2 Dekoichi, flip and draw a card, same as Dark Mimic. 2 Magician of Faith. Practically every spell in our deck is a high impact spell, so being able to recur those is extremely important. 1 Sangant, because we love to have the search ability. 1 Sinister Serpent. There are a lot of cards in this format that require discard costs or cards that hand rip from your opponent. Sinister Serpent makes the hand rips from your opponent less impactful and your discard costs infinitely better. 2 Tsukiyomi. Being able to flip things face down is a very useful form of removal in this format. 3 Book of Moon. Being able to flip things face down is a very useful form of removal in this format. Delinquent Duo. This is a card that many of you will recognize as immediately bonkers. It's pay 1,000, rip 2 cards out of the opponent's hand. Just an amazing card all around. Graceful Charity. It's draw 3, discard 2. This is banned for a reason. Heavy Storm nukes both players' back rows. Heavy Storm is the main reason you have to play somewhat conservatively in GOAT format, because if you set 4, you're gonna get blown out. 3 Metamorphosis. This is one of the key cards of this particular deck. Metamorphosis lets you tribute any monster on your field and then summon a fusion monster of the same level from your fusion deck. Again, your fusion deck can literally contain any number of monsters that you want, so you have an out for literally every situation. For example, a level 1 tribute such as a Dark Mimic, a Magician of Faith, a Sinister Serpent, or even a Scapegoat token will get you to Thousand Eyes Restrict, which is one of the best attack lockers and just removal options in this format. 1 Mystical Space Typhoon, because Mystical Space Typhoon is limited. You have a lot of things that you need to spot remove, which is really useful here. 2 Noblemen of Crossout. You will find very often that people are setting flip monsters in this format. Magician of Faith, Gravekeeper Spy, Dakoichi, Dark Mimic, there's a lot of them. Nobleman of Crossout lets us remove face down monsters, and if we hit a flip monster, we get rid of every copy of it, which is really useful. Pot of Greed is Pot of Greed. Scapegoat. This is what the format is named after because it is a 4 attack blanker. It is just really useful all around, and if any of those tokens stick around, Metamorphosis is your friend. Snatch Steal. Steal an opponent's monster. Mirror Force is Mirror Force. Ring of Destruction is in its pre-errata state, meaning that it's just target a monster, blow it up, you and your opponent both take damage. Sakuretsu Armor is a battle stopper, which is really useful. Torrential Tribute is a blanket nuke, really useful. Trap Dust Shoot is the last card in this deck here, and it's really useful because it lets you look at the opponent's hand and rip a card out of it. Looking at the opponent's hand, though, is extremely critical in this format because it allows you to plan around what their control options are and really be able to make your plays effectively. With that, the deck is covered. Let's jump into today's games. Our first match is up against Reasoning Gate, and this is a pretty solid opening for going first. We're going to have some draw power with Dakoichi, hand ripping with Delinquent, all around amazing. We're going to draw for turn and hit Blackluster Soldier, that's pretty amazing. We'll proceed to main phase 1 and fire off the Delinquent duo, attempting to hit a card out of his hand with the dice here. Going to go for number 5 and hit Nobleman of Crossout. He'll proceed to discard his D-Mock, we'll set Dakoichi and pass the turn. He'll draw for turn here, and hit us with the Graceful Charity. Proceeding to draw 3 and then discards a Dimension Fusion and a Sacred Crane. That does not bode well for us. He'll go up, start Goblin, so we'll get our 1,000 life points back as he draws. And then he'll hit us with the Reasoning. Seeing that we already have the D-Mock in the grave, we're actually going to call 4, thinking we might hit another Sacred Crane. He's going to mill, and mill, and mill, and mill, and mill, and mill, and finally hit a Dark Ruler Hades. That's not good for our Dakoichi here. He'll proceed to battle phase and walk over it, negating Dakoichi's effect with Dark Ruler Hades's. He'll set 1 and pass the turn. We'll draw for turn, hitting an Air Knight Parshath. Pretty nice all around. We're going to proceed to normal summon the Azura Priest here and then Metamorphosis it off for a Dark Flare Dragon. This way we can put a light in our graveyard to summon off our Blackluster Soldier Envoy at the beginning here. We'll banish a light and a dark, summon out our Envoy at the beginning, and trigger his effect to banish the Hades. We'll proceed to battle phase and walk in with the Dark Flare Dragon. That way we're avoiding the Sakuretsu Armor with Blackluster. He'll flip up the Scapegoat in the end phase, revealing that he had goat tokens and not Battle Disruption. Well, you win some, you lose some. He'll draw for turn here, and then pass the turn. We'll draw for turn, drawing into Scapegoat. We'll proceed to main phase 1, tribute off our Dark Flare Dragon for an Air Knight Parshath. We'll go to battle and swing into one of those tokens to deal 19 and draw 1. We'll then proceed to walk in with Blackluster Soldier into 2 of the tokens, and then at that point we'll set the Scapegoat and pass the turn. He'll draw for turn here, and go Heavy Storm to clear our back row. Kinda seems a little overkill. He'll go Snatch Steal to steal our BLS and walk over Air Knight. Oh, that's rough. We'll take 11, and then he'll be able to walk in direct for 3k, which is really not ideal for us here. He'll proceed to main phase 2, set a card, and pass. We'll draw for turn here, hitting a Sakuretsu Armor. We'll proceed to set our Magician of Faith, set our Metamorphosis and Sakuretsu Armor, and pass the turn. We don't want to give him options. He'll draw for turn, switch BLS to defense mode, and banish our Magician of Faith. That is unfortunate. He'll normal summon Sacred Crane and walk in for 16, which we're just unfortunately going to have to take here. He'll pass the turn. We'll draw for turn, top decking into the MST, being able to burst the Snatch Steal and get our BLS back. We also really quickly need to gain 1,000 life points because we forgot to on the previous turn. We will proceed to move BLS back into attack mode and walk into the Sacred Crane for 1,400 damage. We'll be successful, destroy the Sacred Crane, and then proceed to walk into the token with BLS. We'll go to main phase 2, pass the turn, and he flips another Scapegoat. Are you kidding me? Well, they'll go fast enough. He'll draw for turn, proceed to main phase 1, and then metamorphosis it for a Thousand Eyes Restrict. Oh gosh. He'll use Thousand Eyes Restrict to steal our BLS, which is unfortunate, but happens. He'll proceed to the battle phase and walk in for 3k, but we'll flip the Sakuretsu armor to live another turn. At which point he will pass the turn. We'll draw for turn here and hit Trap Dust Shoot. That is really not a good hit here. We're going to pass the turn back to him. He'll draw for turn and then pass it back to us. That seems like he doesn't have much. We'll draw for turn hitting Tsukiyomi. Unfortunately, Tsukiyomi cannot flip a token, so we're just going to pass the turn since it's mandatory. He'll draw for turn and hit Card Destruction. That's actually pretty good for us. Gets rid of our bricks. We'll draw into Ring and Magician of Faith, which is really solid. He'll set a card and pass the turn. We'll draw for turn hitting Graceful Charity here. We'll fire off that Graceful Charity, allowing us to quickly dig through our deck a little more. We'll hit Pot of Greed, Dakoichi, and Scapegoat. We'll pitch off the Dakoichi and Ring of Destruction. We'll Pot of Greed to draw an additional 2 cards here. Hitting Snatch Steal and Book of Moon, really solid. We'll set the Moth, set the Book of Moon, and set the Scapegoat to pass the turn. He'll MST our Scapegoat in the end phase. He'll draw for turn, hitting a Pot of Greed. Well, it was bound to happen. He'll draw 2. And then pass the turn back to us. We'll draw for turn, stand by main. We'll flip up the Magician of Faith so we can get back our Pot of Greed here. It'll be successful, so we'll get back our Pot of Greed, fire it off immediately to draw 2 more cards. Drawing into Heavy Storm and Torrential, really powerful. We'll normal summon our Sangan, proceed to the battle phase, walk into 2 of his tokens and pass the turn after setting our Torrential Tribute. He'll draw for turn, go to main phase 1. He'll fire off the Giant Trunade to bounce our back row back to hand. We'll chain the Book of Moon to flip our Moth face down, and at which point he will concede the duel. Our next game here is going to be against Token Burn, and this is an interesting opening going second. Not the most explosive, but definitely has the power to deal with most threats that he's going to be able to throw out. He'll draw for turn here, activate Level Limit, activate Wave Motion, activate Jam Breeding Machine, and set a card and pass the turn. That is unfortunate for him. We will draw for turn and fire off the Heavy Storm. Yeah, sometimes that happens, man. You can't play into it too much. He's going to attempt to use the Ojama Trio here, but then we're going to realize Jam Breeding Machine restricted his summons. We'll now summon the Azura Priest, go to battle phase and swing in for 17, set 2, and pass the turn, returning the Azura Priest back to hand. He'll draw for turn, fire off a Swords of Revealing Light off the top of the deck, how unfortunate. Set a card, normal summon Cannon Soldier, and swing in for 14. We'll proceed to Sakuretsu Armor because we're not really going to get too many chances to do that. He'll pass the turn, we'll draw into Sakuretsu Armor again. We'll set Sakuretsu Armor and pass the turn here. That's 1 turn on Swords. He'll draw for turn, set a card, and pass the turn. We'll draw for turn, hitting Delinquent Duo, kind of awkward here. He'll flip the Ojama Trio, which fills our board with 3 tokens that we don't really want here. He'll then proceed to Nightmare Wheel one of them, so that we are taking 500 a turn. We don't really have anything we want to do here, so we'll pass the turn 2 on Swords. We'll take 500 in the standby phase after he draws for turn. He'll set a card and pass the turn back to us. We'll draw for turn into Metamorphosis, main phase 1. We scour our extra deck seeing if we have any level 2 options, but unfortunately there are no level 2 fusions in this format, so we'll set the DD Warrior Lady and pass. Swords fades. He'll draw for turn here. I'll take another 500. He'll set a card, flip the Scapegoat so he gets 4 tokens on his side of the field, and he'll pass the turn. We'll draw for turn, stand by main, and immediately drop our Azura Priest and just clear up those tokens, but Gravity Bind, that's unfortunate. We'll have to pass the turn, Azura Priest going back to hand. He'll draw for turn and pass. We'll draw for turn hitting Breaker. Breaker will immediately come down and pop that Gravity Bind so we don't have to deal with it anymore. We'll flip DD Warrior Lady and proceed to battle. 16 in, 15 in, so we get rid of 2 of the tokens, and then we'll pass the turn back to him. He'll draw for turn. We'll take another 500 here. He'll activate Stray Lamps to get 2 more tokens onto the field. Just good grief, delaying the inevitable. And he'll pass the turn back to us. We'll draw for turn, hitting another Azura Priest. We'll go battle phase here, and we'll just clear 2 of the tokens. And we're actually going to go ahead and trigger DD Warrior Lady's effect here so that we can clear up some board space for Azura Priest next turn, at which point we will pass the turn. He'll draw for turn here. We'll take another 500. He'll proceed to set a monster and pass the turn. We'll draw for turn into Pot of Greed, go standby main, and then we'll Delinquent Duo because this is probably the best time we're going to have. We'll hit a Heavy Storm out of his hand. That's interesting. We'll go Pot of Greed to draw 2. Hitting a Book of Moon and a Ring of Destruction, pretty solid. We'll summon the Azura Priest and then proceed to clear the board with Azura Priest, being able to completely clear his tokens and attack into his set monster, which turned out to be another Cannon Soldier. We'll then be able to swing in with Breaker for 16, main phase 2. We'll set back row because now he has no Heavy Storm, and we will proceed to end the turn, returning Azura Priest back to our hand. He'll draw for turn, set a card after taking 500 from the Nightmare Wheel. In the end phase, we're actually going to Ring of Destruction to clear out that token just so we don't have to take that static damage anymore. We kind of kind of forgot to do that in draw phase. So we'll draw for turn, go and standby main. We'll normal summon the Azura Priest and attempt to get in for more damage here. We're going to go 16 in. And he'll Ring of Destruction our Azura Priest. We'll both take 17 from that, but he'll still take the 16 from Breaker. We're both kind of low now, so we're going to go main phase 2 and pass. He'll draw for turn and proceed to concede the duel. Our last game here is going to be against Recruiter Control. So we look at our opening hand, they're going first. This is a pretty solid opening. He'll proceed to draw on Delinquent Duo. That is unfortunate. His Delinquent Duo is going to hit our Nobleman of Crossout. No, probably the best card for this matchup. We're going to proceed to discard Dark Mimic because we'd prefer to keep Moth online. We'll draw for turn, go to main phase 1, fire off the Graceful Charity, hitting Dekoichi, Heavy Storm, and Sinister Serpent. That's really good. We'll discard a Sakuretsu and Sinister Serpent so we can get that back. Proceed to set the Dekoichi, set the Sakuretsu, and pass the turn. He'll draw for turn, going standby main. Flip up the Gravekeeper Spy. Really wish we had the Nobleman for that. Gravekeeper Spy will special summon Gravekeeper Spy. He'll tribute it for Mobius, popping our Sakuretsu armor. Mobius will then proceed to walk into our Dekoichi, so we'll be able to draw one. And we draw into Trap Dust Shoot. Pretty solid here, actually. We're going to draw for turn, hitting the Azura Priest. We'll stand by phase, get our Sinister Serpent back to hand, and proceed to main phase 1, where we'll set them off, set the Dust Shoot, and pass the turn. He'll draw for turn, and we will immediately fire off the Dust Shoot here, so we can take a look at that hand. And we're going to spin back the Chaos Sorcerer from this, because 2 Mystic Tomato means we can't really do anything about Mystic Tomato. Gotta look out for that Scapegoat and Snatch Steal, though. He'll shuffle this Chaos Sorcerer back into his deck, and then proceed to normal summon the Mystic Tomato, switch the Spy to attack mode, walk the Spy into our Moth. Moth will be able to trigger here, and get back Graceful Charity, which is going to be really useful since we have Sinister Serpent already in rotation. He'll then proceed to walk in for 3,800 damage, which is really going to hurt here. He'll go main phase 2 and pass. We'll draw into Mirror Force, pretty solid all things considered. We'll Graceful Charity here to draw 3. And then we will discard Sinister Serpent and one of the Azura Priests. We'll then proceed to Snatch Steal his Mobius the Frost Monarch, which is pretty solid for us. And then we'll Metamorphosis it off, so we can go into Darkblade the Dragon Knight. Darkblade the Dragon Knight is really useful for banishing any light and darks from the grave that he might have. We'll normal summon the Azura Priest and proceed to walk over his board with the Azura Priest. This is really useful for clearing out Mystic Tomatoes in particular, because Mystic Tomato, anything it summons, Azura Priest is just going to walk into it. So Azura Priest will proceed to walk into the Sangan that he summons here. He'll get the Sangan search, unfortunately, but he's going to search for Sinister Serpent, kind of telegraphs that he has something coming. We'll then proceed to walk in for 22 direct with Darkblade, and then proceed to banish as many darks from his graveyard as possible. Unfortunately, we do have to leave him with 1 target. We'll proceed to main phase 2, set the Mirror Force, and then pass the turn, Azura Priest coming back to hand. He'll draw for turn here, going standby main. He'll set a monster, set 2 back row, and pass the turn. We'll draw for turn, hitting Torrential Tribute. We'll go main phase 1, fire off the Heavy Storm. We don't really care too much that we're getting rid of our own Mirror Force. He'll flip the Scapegoat, which is going to be really nice for our Azura Priest to clean up. And then we'll get rid of a Royal Decree, so that Mirror Force was completely useless anyways. We'll normal summon the Azura Priest and proceed to walk over his entire board with it. Azura Priest is really good for these kind of scenarios. Azura Priest will also walk into the Sinister Serpent that he has set, which is going to be really unfortunate, as Darkblade is going to hit him in the face and then proceed to banish that Sinister Serpent from the graveyard, as well as his remaining dark target and Mobius. Go to main phase 2, we'll set the Torrential Tribute, Azura Priest will come back to hand, and we'll pass the turn. He'll draw for turn, go standby main, Snatch Steal our Darkblade, we knew that was there. He'll proceed to pass the turn afterwards, opting to not attack in. We'll draw for turn, hitting Tsukiyomi, getting our Sinister Serpent back to hand so we don't get that banished. We'll proceed to main phase 1, set the Sinister Serpent, and pass the turn, because we're planning on Torrentialing him next turn. He'll go draw standby main phase 1, normal summon the Mystic Tomato, we'll flip the Torrential, and he will flip another Royal Decree. Are you kidding me? He'll proceed to battle phase, Mystic Tomato, walk over the Sinister Serpent, and then Darkblade direct for 22. Really useful turn there for him. He'll proceed to banish the Sinister Serpent and our 2 dark targets. He'll pass the turn. We'll draw into MST. Really, really good top deck here. We'll pop the Snatch Steal so we can get our Darkblade back, and he will concede the duel. So we're back with the list. As you could probably see from those games, this deck is extremely versatile, even with hands that aren't necessarily the best looking. So the pros. It is what the format is named after, it's going to be good. Azura Priest in particular came up very often in these particular test games because of how ubiquitous GOAT is with GOAT format. While there are absolutely better decks in this format for where the game state currently is, with how the metagame has evolved, this is still one of the most reliable decks for getting started because of how open its game plan is. Kind of similar to Quick Draw Dandy Warrior now that I think about it. And the cons. This is the most popular deck in GOAT format. you will have people answer pretty much every one of your threats with something. Azura Priest, for example, was not really played so much in its original format, but has taken a lot of popularity here because of the popularity of recruiters and goats specifically. And lastly, expect to get blown out by the Chaos Monsters. The fact that so many powerful one-ofs are in this format does mean that some games are just going to end out of nowhere. Not really much you can do about that. With that though, we will definitely be returning to GOAT format again. It is just a diverse format that's extremely interesting to look back on.